Have you seen this artwork before? My guess is that you haven't. Not because of anything I think about you, don't worry, it's because of everything that I think about this artwork. See, this piece of art, it's not famous, it wasn't expensive, didn't break any records, it's not a technical masterpiece. If I'm being blunt, it's actually a novelty artwork that doesn't even show up when you Google it. So why am I talking about it? Well, brace yourself for a bit of clickbait, promise I'll deliver. I'd argue that this artwork might accidentally be one of the most important pieces of art ever made. I'm going to try to deliver on that promise, because this is a video partially about the story of this artwork, but it's also a video about what happens when you just decide to tell another story. The opposite story. Welcome to Wonderland. Huge thanks to Canva for sponsoring this video. And just to subvert the whole idea that stories need to start at the start, I'm going to start this story 10,000 years in the future. Language changes quickly, like incredibly quickly. The thing that we understand as modern English, I mean, even if you go back as recently as 200 years ago, you'll see pretty significant changes. I mean, even look in our own lifetime, right? You could have somebody in their 50s talking to someone in their late teens, and only one of them truly knows who rizzed up Baby Gronk for clout. So imagine fast forwarding 50 years, or 100 years, or 10,000 years. You can imagine that language would have evolved so much that we wouldn't understand a frickin' thing. But this presents a huge problem, because what happens if we want to talk to people in 10,000 years time? Just think about the past, right? People 10,000 years ago, they were all pretty wrapped up in that brand new piece of tech called farming. And look at where that got us. Look around you. It's all pretty bonkers, right? And you can imagine a conversation between us and our ancestors, but what about us and whoever the hell is in the future? Well, this isn't just a hypothetical for some people. It's a real problem that they have to solve. Because while we'll all die out, there is something that will live on. Radioactivity. They love farming, we love uranium. Life's cool, I guess. And because we love radioactive stuff so much, apparently, we have come up with cool ways to make sure it doesn't hurt us. And that is, if something is super toxic and super nasty and is gonna keep living for a long time, we bury it. We bury it deep down underground. But what happens when you bury something and you're not going to be around to monitor who's digging? This is a real problem that people have tried to solve. Welcome to the field of nuclear semiotics. In 1979, the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, or WIPP, was ordered to be built in the desert of New Mexico by Congress to store radioactive material. And just over a decade later, a team of linguists, geologists, artists, and even science fiction writers were assembled to try and figure out the best way to prevent future societies from digging up our radioactive past. A lot of ideas were presented. For example, make the landscape look terrifying. Just put like giant spikes there. You could put a huge concrete slab there, or you could just put a bunch of concrete like house-sized slabs, as if to warn people off. Don't go near the blocks. But of course, people love to go near the blocks. Even if those blocks are a memorial for the Holocaust, people will still play on the blocks. There was this one guy who was a writer and a semiotician, symbols fella, who proposed creating a genetically modified breed of cats. This is a real suggestion. The cats would be modified to glow when they got near radiation, and meanwhile the government would work with Hollywood to infiltrate the culture with stories about glowing cats being things that we should avoid.
He might look like a friendly kitty cat, but he's been genetically modified. When he glows, run for your goddamn life.
But all of these ideas, they were outnumbered by the simple one that just kept presenting itself. Symbols. Use symbols. But when it does come to symbols, it's hard to tell what will stand the test of time. Take these two ancient graphics. Yin and Yang, the swastika. One kept its meaning, the other got flipped. So what do? Carl Sagan suggested the use of skull and crossbones. For a while it meant poison, but then the Nazis did the Nazi thing to it, and now you just see that symbol like on kids' shirts. So it's probably too ubiquitous to use, and because of this ubiquity, it has lost a lot of that sting. I mean, I've got a skull and cross bananas right there. That symbol didn't make the cut. So then the team decided faces. What about our faces? You know, like those charts when you go to the doctors and you have to point at which one and how much it hurts? What about someone like that? There was one, and I shouldn't giggle at this, but I'm going to, because I love comics a lot. It's basically just a comic. Man touches the thing, man dies. But this is 10,000 years into the future, and people might not read the same way we do. I mean, if you read ancient Greek lapidary letters, you'll read them left to right and then right to left. The order keeps changing. What if in 10,000 years in the future, people read from the bottom up? Guy touches awesome radioactive thing and springs back to life. Touch it. Touch the poison.
Eternal life hack.
So what did they do? Nothing. Yeah. Whoops. Anticlimax. No, the WHIP team has until 2035 to make a decision. So, I don't know. I'm personally hoping that the cats come back.
Do you think this guy had a glow up or a glow down?
Glow up.
I reckon that'd be pretty cool. But within this story sits a universal dream. To be able to communicate to anybody else without prior knowledge of their context. What symbols do well is they're really easy to read, really easy to understand. What letters do well is they're very versatile. We can use them in lots of different ways to express lots of different concepts. But what letters don't do as well is that universal understanding. They're more esoteric. You have to first know the alphabet to understand what the concepts are. This is why the Rosetta Stone was so freaking brilliant, because it gave us a window into what all of those hieroglyphs meant. There's a symmetry between letters and symbols. What symbols lack in versatility, they make up for in how well they can transcend context. And what letters demand in context, they make up for in versatility. And so it's together that they pack the biggest punch. It's the reason why great job is worlds apart from great job, and why you don't need to speak Spanish to know that this person is laughing. The next question that a lot of people ask is, well, could there ever be something that's the best of both worlds? Could we have a universal language? Before we get to that, there is a good chance that if you're watching this, you are interested in creativity. If you are, then this video's sponsor, Canva, they've recently launched a few new things that might be relevant to your work and life. Canva, they just launched something called Magic Studio. In the bluntest terms, it's Canva plus AI. Among all these wild features, there are a few that stand out. Canva's new video component, Magic Design for Video, it allows you to take this and turn it into this in a few seconds. That's literally bonkers. If you are somebody who has to pitch a lot of ideas, someone like me, then don't worry. Magic Design for Presentations can speed up that whole process. What you can do is use this feature to generate an entire presentation in seconds. But this frees me up to do the thing that I love the most, which is writing. You can even use this drop-down menu to make your written copy more formal if you need to, or if you're on a tangent, more succinct. Not that I'm somebody who gets on tangents a lot. So got your presentation ready, but oh no, you're not a motion designer and you need video. Don't worry, you got Magic Media, text to video. Literally, type in what you need and with one click, it'll bring it all to life. Wow, this is really cool. I mean, Canva's always kind of been useful, no matter what your skill level is, but now that they've got these other tools that they've integrated, they're kind of going double useful. If this is something you need, or if it's just something you want to check out, there is a link in the friggin' description. You will get a discount. Canva.com/struthless. Alrighty, let's keep talking about emojis. So that question, can we have a universal language? This is something that language theorists call an IAL, an International Auxiliary Language. The author Erika Okrent estimates that in the past millennia, there have been over 900 attempts at solving this problem. That means that there have been 900 new constructed languages, all made with the intention to be used as an international auxiliary language, a second language that we can all learn so we can all talk to anybody. The most famous modern attempt, and the poster boy, is Esperanto, but it's far from the only language that has been suggested. You've also got things like Interlingua and Tokipona. Tokipona is really interesting because the idea is that you should be able to learn it almost within a day. There's only about 120 different words in it. For example, they don't have a word for beer, but they do have a word for silly and water. So you might say, hey, want to grab a silly water? That's Tokipona. Now these are examples of languages that are based on words and talking, but there are also international auxiliary languages that are proposed that are all based on symbols. Pictures, kind of like the skull and crossbones. Some examples of this include bliss symbols, ikonji, and the now 100-year-old isotype. The dream is that, yes, we all still have our native language, but there's also this other one that we can tap into. And unlike this other one being, say, English or Mandarin, we are all put on the same level playing field because it's all our second language. Unfortunately, when it comes to practically implementing an international auxiliary language, humanity has not seen that much success. Dang. But when it comes to symbols, we have actually had a little bit more success. And I would argue that the hero of this story kind of won by accident. Let's talk about Emoji Dick. I'm not talking about the eggplant emoji, I'm talking about this book, Emoji Dick. Yeah, it's Moby Dick written by Emojis. The actual execution of it is just okay, but the idea I love. Can an entire book be translated into emojis? It was crowdsourced, and this made for some pretty large inconsistencies. For example, this is a sentence of 3 words, and this is a sentence of 7. You get the idea. It's not really perfect. And there were a couple of people that attempted trying to do the exact same thing, but we wouldn't see a breakthrough in emoji IALs until 2015. When 2 things happened. The first, an emoji became the word of the year. We can all just agree that the word of the year is weird, right? It's never something normal. But in 2015 it was this. And the second thing is we had an entire book that was translated to emojis by a single person. Now, this is important. It might not feel important, but I think it is. The book was Alice in Wonderland, and that translation is the artwork we started with. This thing, this novelty artwork that doesn't even show up when you Google it. Now, I can feel the mild anticlimax of this, but there is more to the story. See, this translation, it can actually be translated back. This is something called transliteration. Something can be turned into one language, which can then be turned into another language. It's a useful translation. Now, where this gets really, really interesting is in the world of emojis, you can take English, put it into emojis, take this, put it into the Wonderland book, and then put it into Spanish, or put it into Mandarin, or whatever the heck you want. That means that these emojis can be translated into any language. Yup, because the emojis weren't used phonetically, it's not like rabbit was a R sound, the rabbit only ever meant the thing, the rabbit. The emojis that we are looking at right now in Wonderland literally serve as a symbol-based international auxiliary language. This is the first example of a book that does this with reasonable accuracy. This is wild, man. And because emojis are global, because we all use them regardless of our native tongue, thanks to the proliferation of phones, it is international, it is auxiliary, and thanks to transliteration, it is a language. Bit of a weird video, this one, isn't it? I think it is. It's part of a series that I'm making called the Alphabet Superset. 26 letters, 26 topics, 26 documentaries. This is E, the 5th in the set, and the topic that I'd written down was Emoji Rosetta Stone. But the more that I started piecing things together, the more a different E emerged. Enantiodromia. It's a concept posed by Heraclitus, allegedly coined by Stobaeus, and then made known by Jung. Enantiodromia is the tendency for things to give way to their opposite outcome. It's like a balance. The more extreme something goes this way, the further it will go that way. It's not a law, it's more like an observation. A good metaphor would be a bow and arrow. The further you pull it back, the further it's going to fly. And that's exactly what we've seen here. Take nuclear semiotics. They are looking for a symbol to drive people away, and in doing this, they've only intrigued people more. It's fascinating, but now they have the real problem. No matter what decision they make, no matter what symbols they go with, despite how free from connotations and ubiquity and perfect they might seem when they decide on them, it's inevitable that those symbols will end up on t-shirts, tattoos, and all over the world. Take the second story, the quest for an international auxiliary language. The aim is to unify the world with one common second language. But instead of one, we have seen over 900 attempts, creating far more languages than this problem was ever trying to solve. And then there's Wonderland. Joe Hale set out to create a masterpiece. Over 27,000 characters. A meticulous word-to-symbol translation that took over 300 hours to complete. Arguably, it's a linguistic milestone. And maybe within it, we might even find the insights that could lead to an IAL, or the kind of context-transcendent thinking that could help with nuclear semiotics. This image is, appropriately, a massive rabbit hole. But here's the irony. While Wonderland was made to be read by anybody, it's kind of been read by nobody. All 3 of these stories are quests for one thing that result in getting their opposite, enantiodromia. And maybe you're experiencing it right now. Maybe you wanted a different ending for this video, something, I don't know, a bit happier, not so fatalistic, something that didn't say why try if you're just going to get the opposite. But let's flip it one more time. Because this video is going live more or less on the anniversary of my sobriety, man. And I realized as I was making this video that enantiodromia can be found there as well. So on the morning of my last ever hangover, of the last ever drink that I ever had, I couldn't have felt more shame if I tried. I hated myself, I hated it was all horrible. But for whatever reason, that morning I decided that The best move was the opposite move. So I asked myself, how is this, what I'm feeling right now, this shame, this hangover, the best thing that has ever happened to me? And the only answer I could come up with was, well, it'd be the best thing if it led to complete sobriety, if I never drank again. And I didn't. I didn't. Hey, that's mad. Yeah, so I don't know. While enantiodromia is just an observation, it's not a law, I think that there are ways that when we feel the arrow pulled back, we can let go and let it fly. And just to subvert the idea that stories have to finish at the end, I am going to end this one 25,000 years in the past, with an ancient idea that encapsulates this whole thing, and an idea that hasn't aged a day. Yin and yang. And appropriately, we're going to leave on one last little paradox. Wonderland, it's probably not as legible as Joe Hale would have liked it to be. Symbols are still not quite there yet. And yet one of the biggest, most universal, timeless, infinite concepts of them all is expressed not most clearly through words, but with its symbol. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Speaking of books, I wrote one. Yeah. Speaking of podcasts, we weren't. Oh, well, I now have a podcast. Cool. Subscribe if you're new. Have a beautiful day and good luck burying radiation. Alrighty. Catch ya.